everybody. Today we are going to talk some about astrocartography. I say it like that because I have had the hardest fucking time saying that word. Even though I've done other videos on this in the past, like almost 2 years ago, I had a hard time saying it then, have a hard time saying it now, have a hard time saying it anytime I fucking say it. Astrocartography. It's like a tongue twister. I'm doing a video about this again. Recently, somebody left a comment on one of the old astrocartography videos from a couple years back, mentioning that they wanted more. And also recently, somebody brought this up in the subreddit, asking a question about astrocartography. And what's had a hard time saying it there? They asked a question about living on a Venus line and if this would be good for finding their soulmate or for a relationship or whatever. I can't remember exactly verbatim what they asked, but it was something along those lines. Okay. And I'm not, and a very valid question, very good question, very fair question. Absolutely. I want to throw this out there though. You have to know how to read your own chart before you start messing with astrocartography on your own. Let me actually rephrase that. You can mess with astrocartography on your own without knowing how to read your natal chart, but you might not get it right. You really do need to have an idea as to what these planets are doing in your natal chart before attempting this. At least a baseline idea of what they're doing. And I say that because on astro.com, they'll give you like a short, well, not some of them aren't really so short, but they'll give you like a cookie cutter, very generalized description of the line that you're looking at. I'll show you that in just a second, what I'm talking about. These descriptions are not tailored to your chart. They're not. They are generalized cookie cutter descriptions. Nothing wrong with that as a starting off point. I want to make that very clear. But don't take that and apply it like they're talking about yours, like they're talking about your chart. And I could say that with any description on any sort of, platform. For the most part, it's not tailored to your chart. It is more generalized. It is more cookie cutter. Again, there's nothing wrong with that in terms of learning and in terms of kind of seeing what that line generally means, like in astrocartography, what that line generally means. But you do need to apply it to your own chart, because a line that sounds terrible or sounds like it might be real difficult might actually not be so difficult for you if you look at the planet in question in your natal chart. Same thing for, a line that sounds like it'd be fucking rad to live on. If that planet is doing some fucky shit in your chart, that line may not be so great. And when I use the terms like good and bad here, right? Like it's all relative, right? For the most part. So I'll be putting those like in quotations. But very valid question this person asked. There are some things, though, for people that do kind of already know how to read their natal chart. There are some other things that I'll look at in astrocartography to kind of get an idea as to how these lines might actually function for the person. So I wanted to talk about those here. And I believe they're things that I haven't talked about in the other couple previous videos, because I kind of went back and watched to see what I had touched on. And I don't think that I touched on these particular things. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen so that you all can follow, so that y'all can see what I'm talking about, so y'all can have a visual. And I also want to mention, if anybody is interested in having, that's my natal chart. Sorry, let me pull up this one. If anybody is interested in having me look at their astrocartography for whatever reason, let me know. It is something that I don't think I have on my menu of services as something you could just outright purchase, like that's specifically about astrocartography. But if you purchase like a 30-minute reading or an hour-long reading and you want it to focus on astrocartography, by all means, we can do that. I am somebody who fucking loves maps. Like I love maps. I could sit and fucking stare at a map of the world for hours and be completely entertained. Same thing with the chart. Same thing with the natal chart. I could stare at a natal chart for hours too. So let me know. And it is, if you are interested, let me know. And it is something that I can help you out with, either reading it for you or helping you learn how to do this. If you want something more in depth or need something more in depth than what I'm about to go into here. Okay, so this is an astrocartography chart. You can zoom out, right? And you'll have the entire world. But I'm zooming in because I'm here in the US. This little red dot with like an X or a cross in it, that is your birth location. I was born in Houston, so that's why that's there. And these are the main lines, right? Like we have the Mercury ascendant line, we have the Sun ascendant line, North Node IC line, so on and so forth. And there will be planets and like the major angle lines, planet to major angle lines all across, right? You'll see them there, you'll see them down here, you'll see them on the side, all that stuff. Now, you can also pull harmonious aspects and disharmonious aspects. I really wouldn't fuck with this at first. I mean, you can, because it gives you, it obviously adds more lines into the equation, but the most important of the lines are these main ones that go all the way across the map. Now, when you're looking at this, let's say you wanted to look at, let's say you're thinking about wanting to move to a Venus line, like this person in the subreddit was asking, or I don't think they were asking to move to a Venus line, but like what it would be like if they moved to a Venus line. Would they find their soulmate? Would they, relationship stuff, all, asking about that kind of a thing. Now, let's say I was trying to do that. Let's say I was thinking about moving to a Venus line for relationships. So what I would do, because like if you read, actually, let me go to this. If you were to read about like a Venus line, like here's a Venus ascendant line, right? The Venus ascendant line. And there's this, well, actually that just says, yeah, and you actually have to click, you have to actually click on the line, because if you just click on this, you'll just get Venus. If you click on this, you'll get ascendant. You actually have to click on the line itself. And it'll give you a description of what the line represents, generally speaking, not necessarily tailored to your chart, but what this line means, generally speaking. And it talks about how you appear sympathetic and alluringly attractive to others, easy to enjoy the more pleasant side of life, blah, 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 blah. Things that generally sound pretty good, right? Okay. Let's look at Venus in my chart. Let's check this shit out. Okay. Venus has some issues in my chart. It has some issues. It is squaring the nodes. Now, anybody, and it has other issues too, but it's squaring the nodes. And anybody that has had me read for them or has watched this channel for long enough knows that I do, these are important. The nodes are important. They are important. And nothing squaring the nodes is particularly easy. Meaning this shit about fucking Venus being easy in this generalized description of this Venus ascendant line may not ring true for me, right? If I was thinking about living on a Venus line, may not ring true for me. And I'm okay. And you see that thumbs up, that little fucker? I can't get rid of that. If anybody knows how to get rid of that stupid shit, let me know. Let me know, because it drives me crazy. And I apologize in advance if it does it again, because it likes to give me thumbs up and thumbs down. I don't know. Anyway. So you'd want to look and see, like, you want to look and see what's going on with the planet in question, with the line you're curious about living on, or what it might be to live on it, or what have you. Because in my case, if I were thinking about living on a Venus line, any of them, it's not going to be particularly easy, because it's squaring the nodes, and it's a skip step, essentially, what I would consider to be a skip step. Also the fact that it's conjunct Uranus, right? That automatically, and that's not really, there are easy and challenging things about that, right? It's also conjunct the galactic center, which adds another element of something or another to it. My point is, Venus in my chart, not easy. I don't know what Venus was like in this person's chart that was asking this question. Maybe it's lovely, maybe it's easy, maybe it's doing all kinds of wonderful shit in their natal chart. So maybe a Venus line would be really great for them. In my case, those Venus lines aren't going to be super easy. Doesn't mean they wouldn't be good for me though, right? Because, you know, in my case, we're talking about the nodes being involved. It's squaring the nodes. So there probably would be something to learn on these Venus lines. Perhaps even something that I could correct or fix or get right, or perhaps also get very wrong with you know, it could go either way. But not easy, because nothing squaring the nodes is easy. You know, so you'd want to take that kind of stuff into account. Another thing you want to look at, you know, relationships, right? That is something that people do ask about a lot in astrology. Ask about relationships, what they need in relationships, all this kind of stuff. So this does translate down to the astrocartography stuff. People are curious what kind of lines might be good for them to live on for relationships, or where they might find a relationship, where, you know what I mean? Now, Venus lines are certainly lines that you could look at for that, right? Absolutely. But I might also look at the lines the lines that are, you know, the planetary ruler of the descendant. In my case, I have my descendant in Gemini. So Mercury is the planetary ruler of Gemini, right? Of the 7th house. So for me, personally, Mercury lines could be what I'd want to look at for relationships. They very well could be. Or relationships might play in more of a way in these lines than maybe what the description might say. What this cookie cutter description might say about it. So you could do the same thing with your chart. You know, if you're wanting to live somewhere to, you know, have a relationship or be in a relationship or attract a relationship, whatever the case might be, look at the planetary ruler of your descendant and see, you know, look at those lines in the astrocartography, because that might bring relationship stuff up more than, you know, it might say in the cookie cutter description. You could do the same thing for career stuff. Let's say you're wanting to move somewhere for a career. You could look at the planetary. Again, this is Mercury here too, because my midheaven ties into career and like the highest and most idealized version of yourself, all of this. It's the cusp, you know, Mercury is the planetary ruler of the 10th house here, 10th house also career. I could look at Mercury lines for career as well in this context. So these are just kind of things to consider as you're looking at. This is kind of how you kind of do this. You look at your natal chart, look at the astrocartography, kind of go back and forth with it like that. You know, I will also say this, some lines, like, this is something that I've noticed with people that I've known, places that I've visited where I've been on one of these lines. I've never lived on a main Jupiter line. But looking at the lines where one's chart ruler, like looking at the lines of one's chart ruler, this is usually something, those lines tend to feel very strong to the person. That might be strong in a good way, strong in a bad way. But like the good things that happen on those lines tend to feel really good. The bad things that happen on those lines tend to feel really bad. There's just a strength to it because you're living on your chart ruler's line. This is also something to think about as you're looking at this. I notice that those lines do tend to be stronger in some way for the person. Another thing to look at here for these lines, to kind of give you an idea as to how these lines might go, is to look at, like, okay, let's say I wanted to live in the middle of nowhere, but fuck nowhere, North Dakota, right? The sun ascendant line. Let's say I wanted to live on it. I look at the description of it and it sounds really nice, right? It generally does. It sounds pretty nice. Let's say I wanted to live on this line. I'm like, okay, this sounds good. I want to live out in buttfuck nowhere, North Dakota, for whatever reason. So then I want to take a look at my chart and see what the sun and ascendant are doing in my chart, along with the sun and my chart ruler, or the planetary ruler of the ascendant. So in this case, my sun's at 1 degree, 45 minutes of Sagittarius. My ascendant is at roughly 16 degrees Sagittarius. They're not really making an aspect. It's too wide to be a conjunction, in my opinion, it is. So they're not really making an aspect. The sun is also not making an aspect with Jupiter, the ruler of the ascendant. So that doesn't add, it doesn't add any ease or any challenge, because there's not an easy aspect being made. There's not any aspects at all being made, really. Now, so you do want to consider that too when you're looking at these lines, right? That's like another element to bring in. Now, let's say my sun happened to be, I'm gonna stop sharing this now. Let's say my sun, though, happened to be, I don't know, let's say it was square the ascendant. I'm looking at the sun ascendant line. Let's say my sun was square my ascendant. And let's say the sun was square the planetary ruler of the ascendant. So you got the sun squaring the ascendant, sun squaring the planetary ruler of the ascendant. That might make that line that sounds really nice perhaps be more challenging. Let's say the sun in my chart was, I don't know, let's say it was trine the ascendant. And let's say it was sextile the chart ruler, or sextile the planetary ruler of the ascendant. Those are some easier aspects, right? More harmonious aspects. So perhaps that line that sounds really good might be even better. You want to take that kind of stuff into consideration as well. That I think is very important too. Especially when, like, like the example of like for like relationships, perhaps looking at the planetary ruler of the 7th house, right? Looking at what that planet's major lines are doing. And thinking, okay, like in my case, like Mercury is the planetary ruler of my descendant. So those Mercury lines might have a flavor of relationship stuff coming up, living on those. But then I'd want to see, like, what is Mercury doing to my descendant in my chart? What aspect does it make, if anything? What aspect does it make to the planetary ruler of the descendant? Does that make those lines, is it kind of neutral? Does it kind of not do anything? Or does it make some challenging aspects? Does it make some easy aspects? Does it make one challenging aspect and one easy aspect that then kind of neutralizes that? You want to take all of these things into consideration when you're looking at this. That's why it's so important to kind of have an idea about how to read your natal chart before you really do this. Now, that doesn't mean you can't try. I'm not trying to discourage or dissuade anybody from trying, right? I would never do that. But if you are looking to move somewhere, let's say, or you're wanting a change, you're wanting to move somewhere, and you're wanting to implement astrocartography to help you find a place, definitely know how to read your chart first, or find somebody to help you to do it for you. That would be my advice. I think that's pretty sound advice. Anyway, I'm going to head off. But if you want to find me, I'll put where you can find me in the description box below. You want to get a reading or whatever, say what's up, whatever the case might be. And I will see you all later.